Good morning or good afternoon, esteemed delegates. We are now at the next session, which is an interview with Collins Aerospace on optimizing airline operations through connectivity. On stage for this session, we have Jamie Partington, who is the IMS Regional Director, Middle East and Africa at Collins Aerospace. James leads Collins Aerospace's information management system services business across Africa and Middle East. For over a decade, Jamie has dedicated himself to supporting African airlines by understanding the unique operational requirements and ensuring that Collins Aerospace develops solutions that will enable them to better serve their stakeholders and passengers. This session will be moderated by Captain Joe Diebolder. Captain Joe is also better known as Joe among the other social media platforms. Since the beginning of 2019, Captain Joe has become the worldwide largest aviation-related channel YouTuber with close to 1.5 million subscribers. Captain Joe inspires and motivates the youth in the next generation of pilots on careers as pilots. He currently is a pilot at CargoLux Airlines International. I now hand over to you, Captain, and Jamie.
Thank you much for the warm welcome, Maureen. It's an honor to be here today and speak on behalf of Collins Aerospace. A brief introduction about myself. My name is Joe Diebolder. I've been an airline pilot for more than 12 years now, flying many different types of planes, such as the Pilatus Porter, which is quite famous in Africa, the Beech King Air as well, and the Airbus A320 family. And currently, I'm operating as a cargo pilot on the beautiful Boeing 747. Now, besides my flying career, I love to share my passion and knowledge for aviation on my social media platforms, where I'm better known as Captain Joe, helping fellow flight students and passengers getting a better understanding of what's going on inside the cockpit. So I'll be asking Jamie some interesting questions in the next 20 minutes, as I'm very keen to understand and learn how Collins Aerospace will impact the aviation industry in rising Africa. So off to you, Jamie.
Thank you very much for that, Captain Joe, and thanks again, Maureen, for the very warm welcome. So just a quick message of thanks to all the Africa team for putting this on. I wish that we could be there face to face and in person. The events in Africa, the Afra events on the continent are always great to attend. But thank you very much to you guys, to the Afra Secretary General, to dignitaries, executives, and ladies and gentlemen for giving us your time today to listen to our discussion on optimizing airline operations through connectivity. So if I could just do a very brief introduction. The Afra Stakeholders Convention theme, Building Blocks for the Air Transport Industry Recovery, this resonates really well with Collins Aerospace and is well aligned to our values and strategic initiatives. I'm also hoping that some of the content of what we plan to talk about today will also help creating the vision for some of those building blocks as well.
Thanks, Jamie, for the brief introduction. But before we get started into your presentation, can you explain or answer the question for our viewers? Who are Collins Aerospace and what can they do for the African aviation industry?
You know what, Captain Joe? That's a question that we get asked all the time. And I think I'd like to answer that question in two parts, if I may. So firstly, I think a great way to sum up who Collins Aerospace are is with a phrase that a dear colleague actually taught me, and that is, when you fly with us. Now, in this discussion, we're obviously going to focus on connectivity, of course, but allow me just to put a little bit of context behind that statement without taking up too much time. So we are truly redefining aerospace, and we firmly believe that we offer the greatest breadth of quality services and solutions in the industry today, which include landing systems and wheels and brakes for many aircraft types in your fleets in Africa, seats and lighting systems, in whether in economy or premium economy, business class cabin or the first class cabin. In your galleys, we provide the ovens, the fridges, the coffee machines. We provide the nacelle housing systems, actuation products, ice detection and protection systems, and of course, much, much more. We are the service provider, but in many cases, we're also the OEM for critical components on your aircraft. Hence the phrase, when you fly with us. Now, I sit in the avionics business unit, which is of course an area that we have a long, long heritage in and is particularly associated with the Collins name. And the second point I'd just like to make is in regards to our commitment to Africa. Now, this is a relationship that goes way back over 50 years, providing essential communication services, especially in relation to ACAR's air-to-ground messaging. And in fact, we have the largest VHF network in the continent today. We've been assisting African airlines for many, many years with all of the associated activities for new aircraft entering into service in their fleets. And as we look to the future, we're best placed to enable African airlines with better digital capabilities through our nose-to-tail connectivity solutions, both in the air and on the ground. And finally, a very important point to make as well, is that we're working really hard to establish the first MRO Centre of Excellence in Africa.
Okay. Now, Jamie, you've mentioned the word connectivity a couple of times, meaning it is definitely an important part of your department at Collins Aerospace. But can you explain to us why aircraft connectivity is so important now, and especially in Africa?
Joe, I think the timing of that question couldn't be more relevant than it is right now. And I'm happy to give a bit of perspective around that. So the term connectivity can be a little confusing sometimes. We've certainly heard it used as part of this AFRA event in terms of providing better connections for passengers for traveling across Africa. But also it has an association to simply mean in-flight internet access for your passengers. Now, I think it's very important that that's a very important aspect of connectivity, of course, but connectivity is much wider than just the cabin, and it should be thought of as a connected ecosystem. Now, what do we mean by that? That is bringing into that ecosystem connectivity in the cockpit, the cabin, and on the ground. So in the cockpit, bringing cellular gate link connections, for example, for better connectivity, bringing Wi-Fi in the cockpit for EFB enhancements, and even been able to channel ACAR's messaging over an IP connection. In the cabin, yes, bringing that all-important internet access for your passengers, but also for your crew as well, whilst the aircraft is in flight. And finally, on the ground, managing all that complex data once it hits the ground. And that's what we mean by the connected ecosystem.
Okay, this does provide a good picture of the connectivity, and you just mentioned data. But what about the data transfer? Is that possible then too?
Well, we only have to look at some of the aircraft that are around today, and an aircraft of today, especially the next generation, they're churning out more data than ever before. And the level of that data is absolutely immense. So similarly, the actual data itself is now more complex, and the multiple different channels to get the data off the aircraft down to the ground for analysis by flight ops, or sent directly to the various OEMs, depending on its nature, can also present major challenges. But despite these challenges, the focus on data capture and optimization of that data is now more important than it ever has been before. Operational control centers across Africa, they want their latest engine data or QAR reports now. Pilots want the latest weather information in real time, regardless of what equipment may or may not be in the cockpit to permit this vital data exchange. And I think an easy example to illustrate this is with the QAR reports, which I've just mentioned, which typically required an engineer to physically walk up to the aircraft, plug in his laptop, log on to the onboard computer, and download the data. That could take a long, long time. But now we can enable an enhanced level of connectivity in the cockpit, which can utilize a 3G or 4G network as well as Wi-Fi links at the gate, which can automate that process and bring in further operational efficiencies.
Okay. Now, you've painted a really good picture here of the importance of connectivity, but what I don't understand or can make the connection yet is how would African airlines benefit financially from good connectivity?
Well, let's maybe steer the conversation to something that's very relevant in the Africa market today, and that's been mentioned throughout this AFRA event. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Now, this went effective in January of this year. And yes, we are facing some major challenges in the industry today, but the foundations are in place that should drive business growth in Africa moving forward. Now, these market conditions mean that an African airline will really have to differentiate themselves in order to survive, really. And I think the best way to achieve that, or what is the best way to achieve that, is through investing in technology. And that will also lead to reducing costs, improving operational efficiencies, and also generating more revenue. Now, connectivity is a key factor in all of this. And through our nose-to-tail connectivity programs, we've been helping many airlines in the region on their own unique digital transformation journeys. I think it's an important point. To make there, because it can be a very daunting journey for any airline to embark on. And if it's not done correctly, it can also be very costly. So all the decisions must be made on a robust and proven business case. Now, luckily at Collins, we have the hard data and the facts to support those sorts of important decisions and provide the confidence to the executive leadership that they're making the right moves.
Okay. It all sounds great, but I need a bit of a more hands-down example. Can you give me a real-life scenario, perhaps how it impacts flexible operations, and is it more catered towards the cargo or passenger airline operation or industry?
Well, you've mentioned two very important areas there, Joe, passengers and cargo, and I'll try to elaborate on those, but I may also bring in some additional considerations as well. So firstly, you mentioned cargo. So it's no joke that COVID-19 has led to airlines having to rethink and diversify their operations. And we've seen a massive operational shift towards cargo operations, of course. Now, what does this mean? Well, this means that there's going to be a lot more aircraft in the skies at night. And not only that, pilots are going to have to land at more remote airports at night as well, which bring their own elements of danger, of course. Now, Collins have been helping pilots make difficult landings for years with our enhanced vision solutions. And to relate this to connectivity specifically, pilots now need to have constant communication with their operations teams on the ground, and they need to get that latest weather information en route and at the destination to ensure that the aircraft is on the most optimal flight route possible.
Okay.
Secondly, you mentioned passengers. So I'd like to think of passengers as actually passengers and crew, because after all, they're both in the cabin. So let's say that there's a 9-hour flight from West Africa to Addis, for example, and you have passengers on board who could be generating ancillary revenues for you through the sale of duty-free items, food and beverage items, or seat upgrades. Similarly, you've got crew on board who could also be making equipment checks. Now, crew management applications, or what we call the electronic cabin bag, can utilize any available connectivity that may exist on that aircraft. And they can use that to even, as you know, be able to verify a credit card transaction. Similarly, the crew can actually make real-time reports of something like a faulty seat or an expired fire extinguisher. And engineering teams can be ready to board the aircraft to fix or replace that item as soon as the aircraft gets to the gate. I think that's another great example of improving operational efficiency there with connectivity.
Okay, so just a quick example here, speaking of that sort of data download, I'm just picturing a flight where, for example, the oil quantity is below its minimum level, and it's showing that on my engine instrument. Now, could a message of the low oil quantity be sent down during flight to maintenance office automatically so that they immediately can take action and refill the oil once the plane has landed at its destination? So can I expect a mechanic at the gate ready with an oil can in his hand to fill up my engine?
Yeah, okay, well, I think that's another great question which you've raised there, and a really good example. And it brings us into a conversation about predictive health monitoring. Mm-hmm. And this is something that good connectivity is essential for. So engineering and maintenance teams all across Africa are always looking to be more proactive than reactive. And the last thing any airline wants to have to deal with is either a flight diversion or a cancelled flight due to a faulty engine component or an oil leak or whatever the case may be. Our Essentia solutions can monitor hundreds of components on your aircraft and provide prognostic data at all stages of flight, which will allow engineers to eliminate those unplanned maintenance windows, and also make early predictions to swap out essential components, and yes, have the engineering teams in some cases standing by ready to board the aircraft as soon as the aircraft is on the ground.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Now, a big discussion point in modern day and age is sustainability and becoming more environmentally friendly. Can you give an example how your technology and services, such as the mentioned connectivity, make an impact on sustainable aviation industry, especially over the beautiful continent of Africa?
I'm very pleased that you brought this question up, because sustainability is a very important subject and is something that we can all relate to, and we all share those same concerns. Yes, I miss going and traveling to the beautiful continent of Africa. I've been to many places, had great experiences, and I want to make sure those experiences continue to be there for my children and my children's children, of course. For the aviation industry, sustainability is a concern that touches almost every aspect of an airline's organization. And it's also something that Collins take very, very seriously. We're working with entities across the board on sustainability initiatives with airports, engineering teams, maintenance teams, and ground operators. In fact, some of our strategic initiatives, which are endorsed by our president, Steve Tim, are designed with the objective of improving sustainability. For example, research and development into advanced structures for manufacturing seats in a more environmentally friendly way, and optimizing electrical propulsion systems in aircraft, and of course, the connected ecosystem, which can be linked to sustainability in a number of ways. But just for the purposes and also for your interest as a pilot, I think a really classic example is connectivity being used in been used to promote sustainability through, for example, flight profile optimization. Mm-hmm. If you as a pilot and all of your onboard computers are getting the very latest weather information and all the associated data to calculate the most optimum flight path possible, then you're going to get to your destination in a manner that will save as much fuel as possible and therefore cut down on emissions. So through connectivity, you'll achieve really good flight profile optimization and therefore conserve fuel and manage your fuel in a much better way and reducing harmful emissions.
Fantastic.
Sorry,
that really makes sense.
We are short of time. We will need to wind up.
I'm just wrapping up right now, Maureen.
We're just going to wrap up now.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Jamie, and giving us an insight into the benefits of good connectivity within the aviation industry and how African airlines, cargo or passenger can profit from these services. I can already see myself as a pilot as we will implement new procedures to take full advantage of the mentioned systems and solutions for more flexible and sustainable operation. But let me just wrap up the key points of our presentation now. Collins Aerospace can help me connect better with my aircraft and help me and my airline to save fuel in terms of the flight profile optimization, what you mentioned at the end, and allows me to land more safely at remote locations spread throughout Africa and even generate ancillary revenues. And more importantly, Collins will support airlines to become more sustainable with their provided technology and services in the nearby future. As you mentioned in the beginning, I really like that quote by Collins, when you fly with us. So thank you very much, Jamie.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Captain Joe. And please, all I would say just in the closing remarks is we have a virtual booth. We have a virtual Collins booth. Please do come and visit us and see how Collins can help you. And thank you very much, everybody, for your time.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much to a very well moderated panel. Thank you very much, Captain. And I will be following you on YouTube. I see you have
Thank
very
you,
good
Maureen.
following.
Appreciate
Me
it.
too. Yeah.
Yes, and thank you to Jamie. The contacts, those who wish to contact Collins Aerospace, you're free to do so. We'll share the slides at the end of the event. Thank you very much. And let's meet at the next session, which is a presentation from Predictive Mobility on how airlines can come stronger after the pandemic. Let's meet next session. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Maureen. Bye-bye.